Hello, everybody. My name is Marsh, and this is my review of Secret Project Number 1, Tress of the Emerald Sea. Let's jump into it. To start out, if you can leave a like and subscribe, that'd be greatly appreciated. But let's go ahead and jump into this spoiler-free review. So, Tress of the Emerald Sea. This is going to be my spoiler-free review. I'm going to also have a discussion later in a separate video because there's a lot of things I want to talk about Cosmere-wise in this book. But I'll go ahead and go into what I think about it spoiler-free. Just to give a brief summary of what to expect with the book. As the book says, it's a book about a girl who lives on a rock and likes cups. And due to certain circumstances, she's led to take a certain path. And that's about the most I'll say. I want to leave the rest to you because it's a pretty exciting tale. And I'd say it's really fun. The main thing I'd say it compares to is that of Warbreaker in terms of the overall feeling of it. So if you ever read Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson as well, that's, I would say, its best comparison. They're both standalone, and also they both have similar type of feel in terms of like the mood and what you're trying to portray in this story. Now, in terms of the story itself, there's one main character that it follows the whole time. That is Tress, also known as Glorf, but they don't really refer to her as that. As you find out, it's a family name. And it's basically about her adventure and what happens with her. In terms of her character, she describes herself as someone who's not unique in any way and doesn't really have any special qualities. But as you go on, she learns new things about herself through all these events that she has to go through. And you learn to like her as a character. She's very empathetic in the terms that she doesn't want to hurt anyone. She wants to always give the best she can to everyone and help everyone out that she can. She's not a selfish character. I would say she's basically empathy personified when it comes to characters. And along the way, there are certain other characters as well that are very good. A lot of the side casts that join her actually do bring some slight emotion to you when it comes to everything. There's certain satisfactions and conclusions that happen with certain side characters where you think the main conclusion would only happen with this main character, but also the side characters get their own conclusions as well, and they're very satisfying. Outside of her as the main character, I don't really want to say any other names because I don't want to give any spoilers. I want you to go into it since it's a brand new book, not knowing very much and just knowing that it's fun. I do like it more than Warbreaker, actually, I would say, as a comparison for Brandon Sanderson. The one complaint I would say I do have in terms of it would be that of the big bad, per se. It's kind of one of those situations where it's like, here's a mustache-twirling villain for the sake of a mustache-twirling villain, or here's an evil guy and for the sake of an evil guy kind of thing. I don't feel like we get a proper motivation for her, which isn't always required, because nowadays every story does have a proper motivation and tries to make every villain sympathetic. So it is kind of refreshing not having a sympathetic villain for once, and just having someone who is bad for the sake of being bad. That'd probably be my biggest flaw, though, if that is something you need a sympathetic villain, that being. Other than that, though, it's pretty fun for the most part. The comedy I found good in certain times. I feel like for some people it's going to go over their head. You have to have a specific comedic taste. I won't say everything was extremely funny to me. And I feel like what this kind of reminded me of, in a way, it was sort of the feeling of Warbreaker, but then bringing in another author, Neil Gaiman. It was like Brandon Sanderson was kind of trying to change his prose or just do something different with his prose, where it reminded me a lot of Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman and Good Omens by Neil Gaiman, the way he was doing some of his prose, not to the extent that Neil Gaiman does his, but in the sense that he's sort of talking to you in a way. The author or the narrator, they're talking directly to the audience at times, which I enjoy, and it reminded me a lot of, actually, I would say, Neverwhere. honestly, this is like, actually, I really think it's very similar to Neverwhere. If you enjoyed Neverwhere, you're gonna really enjoy this book in terms of what you see, considering Neverwhere is a story about a man, in this case, going on an adventure and doing things and going to mystical places and doing all that stuff. I would say this is actually very similar in that way now that I think about it, and it's actually a good comparison. So I would say if you do enjoy Neverwhere, then this is definitely a book you'd want to pick up. Brandon Sanders's prose aren't as in-depth as Neil Gaiman's prose, but that's one thing that he's always had knocked, I guess, on him, or a negative towards Brandon Sanderson, is he kind of has plain prose. But I feel like this is actually one of his best jobs in terms of prose, not because it's purple and flowery, but comedically how he did it. But I don't know if that's going to work for everyone with the way they enjoy it. In terms of plot, I would say the story, it has its beginning, its middle, its end, and it has a satisfying conclusion, I would say. For, like, I don't think if you read it, you're going to be upset with the ending. I don't think it's not anything to change or be the best book ever, but it's very adequate, and I don't think there's any issues with the ending at all. And then in terms of the setting for the book as well, I don't really want to explain it all that much because I kind of want the audience to go into it and discover it for themselves, because that was one of my favorite things, was learning about the mystery of this setting in this book and how the environment acts in certain ways. And I feel like Brandon Sanderson did a really good job with that, because that was one of the most intriguing things I found in this book, was how the setting played into everything and how the environment was acting around the characters, because a lot of the times it seemed as though the environment itself was more of a villain than the villain, if that makes sense. I'll let you read it to discover what exactly I'm talking about when it comes to that, but I thought the setting was very smart, and you could say the setting itself is the main villain. No, it's not, but it's very interesting, and I like the way he uses the setting to not only progress the story, but also give you that world building and sense of mystery. And lastly, what I'd say is, if you're a big fan of the Cosmere and you've read a lot of other Brandon Sanderson novels, this book is going to make you extremely happy. The characters and references and things from the Cosmere that came in are so they just put a smile on your face, and I feel like this is probably one of the most Cosmere involved novels that he's put out yet. And I'm not going to say why, for what reasons, because I want you to see it yourself and see the connections, but it's probably one of the most connected Cosmere novels I've seen yet. Now, I haven't read everything by him. I've read a majority of his stuff, but so far it's pretty intense, and I would say this is like, it's kind of that first step for me of seeing, oh, I see this universe coming together of all these different planets in the Cosmere, and that just made me really happy, because I kind of felt like it was always just going to be little hints the whole time and never anything coming together, but this book kind of was a step forward for the Cosmere as itself and connecting everything overall. How was Tress of the Emerald Sea? I would give it a solid 8 out of 10 to 8.5. I'm not an expert. It's all subjective in the end. You like it how you like it. I like it how I like it when it comes to it. But if you've already read it, let me know how it is. I'm going to have a separate spoiler-filled discussion video, because there's a lot of Cosmere things I want to talk about, as well as story things. And I feel like I can go more in depth on a lot of things that I really enjoyed, and some things I didn't care about as much. But if you liked the video, please leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.